Your Majesties, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for returning. Trust you and yours are well, and you're loving yourself and others like always. Many thanks to all of you for the support you give to the channel. Thank you so much to our channel members, to our anonymous supporters, to all of you, my esteemed subscribers. You love, celebrated, and appreciated. All right, today I want us to delve into Nigerian crude oil. Of course, we know that Nigeria is one of the producers of crude oil. And a lot have went down or have gone down since Nigeria discovered crude oil in late 1950s. And we have the former president of Nigeria to elaborate about that. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up to you here is because we keep telling you that most of the times the resources of the African people is always stolen in a subtle way. The resources of the African people is not for them most of the times. You see that the nation have 1, 2, 3 or more resources, but at the end, this nation keeps suffering, okay? Africa is so rich, but yet Africa is so poor. Why is it like that? It's because of the situation that Nigeria is in at this point. And we have the former president of Nigeria to elaborate about that because he is also from the region where this oil was discovered. Do you know that after this oil was discovered by the locals, instead of this oil being a blessing to those who are in that region, it seems like the oil became a curse to them. And should it be that way? No. You can't have resources and then the resources in turn tend to be a curse to you. Because the government sometimes exploits these people, if that is correct, because that should your government exploit you. But this is the outcry of those who are from that region. They have these resources, they are not benefiting from that which they have. I'm going to leave you with the former president of Nigeria, elaborate about this situation. And if there is time, we'll take it up from there, Your Majesties.
When, of course, from the records, the oil exploration started in Nigeria, I think it's 1910 or 1911 or so, when the company that was to explore coal or whatever veered into oil. Then, of course, Shell Diaki came into the current southeastern area in Muanambra. Started exploring in 1930 to 35, started exploring for oil. Then it was Shell Diaki. Before was not successful until when they migrated into the Niger Delta. And I think on 15 January 1956, that oil was discovered in commercial quantity in Oloibri, the first oil well that you're talking about. And within that period, I think it's about February or so, oil was also discovered in commercial quantity somewhere in Ogoni. So sometimes Ogoni people will even claim that they discovered oil in Ogoni before the Oloibri, but the records are clear. The first commercial oil well, 15 January 1956, was in Oloibri. But then the volume was small, so they did not export the oil until 1958. 1958 was the first time they exported oil out of Nigeria. So, as we grew up in the area, as at that time, the oil industry does not make much sense to the people then. They didn't even know the value of the oil as at that time. Because basically, society was very rural. The government was very far away, and people were satisfied by what they can get from the river, from the bush. Sometimes we just enjoy, especially as children, we just enjoy seeing the white people coming around, playing in the river, and so on. I remember classically when we were in primary school, there was a day 3 helicopters landed in my village, and three. You know, seeing 3 helicopters, one landed. Then I think it has some problems. So they have to bring mechanics and so on to come and set us to 2 other ones. So it was like, today, because every day when helicopter always land from time to time and things like that. So people were just enjoying seeing these yachts and tugboats and others. So, but it doesn't make sense to even the adults, because then most people, society, don't have enlightened people like you then, because most people didn't know what was happening. It was much later to begin to appreciate the effect of the oil. And that is why we couldn't, as at that time, even agitate for a better deal. Because as at that time, if people were aware, like today, people from the Niger Delta, especially the Yobia area where oil was first discovered in commercial companies, would have been big people in Shell. We would have been able to impress on the oil companies to train our young people to become petroleum geologists, petroleum engineers to work. But people didn't even care. People just were interested in being laborers and so on. So even most of the senior people that worked with the oil companies were from either from the present southeast or southwest and so on. That is why they still dominate the oil industry till today, because they still don't give us the chance that we're supposed to. So, but later, the awareness came up, and young people really started revolting, especially the issues of environmental impact of the oil industry. pollution of water, pollution of land, and air pollution. And those things are still there. And I think because of the excessive awareness, since the oil companies didn't start early to look at these things critically, it becomes very difficult for them to manage. So what the oil companies are doing now is to leave out their oil wells that are in land and shallow waters to indigenous, and they move into the deeper water. But that's supposed not to be. There is when I was a deputy governor of Bayelsa State, when we visited, I led a team to China because we were trying to see how we can link up with some companies and so on. And there's a city we visited, I think Dashing, I can't remember exactly the pronunciation. They described it as the oil city in China. And from that visit, it opened my eyes. Oil was discovered in Nigeria, in Olobri, 1956. Oil was discovered in China by the same Western companies in 1958. Okay. But so 2 years in Nigeria before China. But as at the time we visited, there was it 2002 or so. Most of the inputs for the oil industry were manufactured in China. While here in Nigeria, even if a valve is to be replaced, that valve, they will go to the parent company. If it is Egypt, they must go to France. They have to go to England if it's Shell, or US. So they treated us differently because of the way we look at the oil industry. And the interesting thing about that city, I was calling Dashing, is that within the city there, like as I said, Port Harcourt is an oil city, but we don't see oil wells. But within the city, in front of the offices and in front of the living homes, you see oil wells. And because the pressure from the oil is low, okay. Only immediately you hit the oil, the pressure is so much. So you have to compress it. Yeah. But there, the pressure is low, so it's like water. Okay. So you need the pump to pump out. So you see that on the wells, they install these pumps, and we see these pumps moving this way, and it gives a very nice vista. Initially, I asked, what is happening? This front of this house, this in front of the offices, you see, say, no, those are the pumps. And you see the grass green everywhere, clean. You don't see a drop of oil anywhere. You only see the pump, pumping the oil. And ordinarily, that should have been the basis of the operations in the Niger Delta. But they started carelessly, and probably they look at the cost implications. And rather, instead of the oil companies to improve on how they will manage the oil processes with minimal spillages, they rather say, okay, you Nigerians take over this side that young people are over disturbing us. Let's move to the deeper waters that we have. No, the communities, women will not come and block road because there's no road to block in the other ocean. See, that is the show, because especially when you ask, the evolution of the oil industry. Those of us who grew up within the area, at that beginning, there was a lot of ignorance, maximum ignorance, and maximum friendship. It was when the awareness came up that these hostilities started, which was much, much later. The oil industry started wrongly. So it's also very difficult for them to fix. But still, they can do a lot. Like you talked about when I was in Umpadeg, I was an assistant director of environmental protection in the Directorate of Environmental Protection and Pollution Control. And we go to some places where pipes burst, not that people tampered with it. The pipes were old. Yes. So ordinarily, most of those old pipes should have been replaced. And with technology now we talk about youths monitoring pipelines. We're supposed to grow above the level where you carry human beings to be monitoring pipelines. Pipelines should be monitored with technology. Before, so anybody who goes close to attempt to either use explosives, dynamite or whatever, or manual, should be picked. And arrests should be made. But maybe because of the cost implication, maybe because our regulations are weak. So the company, just look, so the company continues to do the same thing. Just look at the gas flaring. If people from other parts of the world, when they come into Nigeria and see the volume of gas we flare, they feel bad. Why will you be wasting so much energy? Gas. In fact, we know it's an associated gas, but you can scrub the gas and you get the clean gas out. And even use the condensers and refine it to get separate PMS, kerosene, and others. So we feel, how will the country be burning their gas? So from day one, if the regulations were okay as at that time, you couldn't allow anybody to flare gas. That means that if you are coming to mine the oil, you will have to drill that into it. But it was not done, and they already have their oil well scattered. So you place a little fine on it, and they look at the cost of building a plant to gather the gas, and they feel that paying the fine is cheaper for the oil companies. So they continue to pay the fine. So these are the problems. So the starting point was faulty, and we'll continue to exploit. And if you look at now, we're trying to review the petroleum industry with the new petroleum law and so on, but that's at that time. And as at the time those petroleum laws then were drafted, we had no petroleum engineers. How many petroleum engineers we had? How many petroleum lawyers, petroleum economists, petroleum geologists that we had that could even help us really frame laws that will bind the oil companies? I remember what Museveni, the president of Uganda, told me one time, I think when I was in office. He said, at the time Shell came to Uganda and said that, oh, they want to mine oil. They get to know that, yes, they have oil. And they wanted to start mining. I said, I don't want to get into this problem of Nigeria. So I said, okay, they should wait. So I asked them to come back. So he now called the Minister of Education to get all the young people who read physics and chemistry and quickly send them abroad to read different aspects of the petroleum industry. And young lawyers to go and read petroleum law. At least let them have their master degrees in this area. Yes. Even if they will not get PhD first, but they have some reasonable knowledge before we talk with these people. Yes. That is the problem. So we never had people who knew anything about petroleum. Yes. And so a lot of things were done wrongly. So the process of correction is quite challenging. Yes. Otherwise, how will the oil companies prefer to pay fine than to do the correcting? That means that the fine was probably 10% of what they will lose if they are to gather the gas. So these are the challenges of the Niger Delta, and that's why we still have these issues till today, these environmental issues till today. But today it is even more complex. Today, most of the environmental problems are not caused by the oil companies, but are caused by our very people who try to take the crude oil and use locally made refinery and refine. And if you go and take crude oil and use a local system to boil the crude oil, the only thing you can get is diesel. So if you get maybe 30% of the volume, we throw the rest out, pour into the creeks, and cause maximum pollution. If you pass some parts of the Niger Delta, you feel sad. It's caused by the people themselves because they want to sell that. Because it's only diesel. Because if you crack it to those smaller components, you burn down the place because you will not be able to control because they're very highly volatile. Diesel is not volatile. So that is the level, they crack it to the level of diesel and remove the diesel, which is just about 30% of the crude oil. And you pour the rest away. Basically from the south zone or the Niger Delta, I am the first and only, and of course from a minority ethnic group. So the kind of politics our forefathers played from the 50s, I cannot say from 1914 when Nigeria was amalgamated, because the books you read don't give you a clear perspective of how Nigeria was amalgamated. It was done by the British people. The key actors from Nigeria that participated in that amalgamation, you'd hardly hear what they say. But the key political actors, people like Nnamdi Azikiwe, people like Obafemi Awolowo, people like the Sardauna of Sokoto, and so on. All these people were less than 10 years old at the time of amalgamation. They didn't play any role. But in the 50s, when we were marching towards independence, that was when these people came to play a key role that led to the independence in 1960. Political parties were formed during in the late 50s, leading to the independence. And the kind of politics our forefathers played that time is still the politics we play today. We play tribal and regional politics. And it is quite unfortunate if you compare Nigeria to other African countries. You really see that you find it difficult to say that this was a national leader in Nigeria that attempted to bring the country together. I said for young people, we should know that this issue of tribe and religion, these are the major setbacks for this country. This makes people, it creates problems for leadership recruitment. If somebody is holding a political office and he wants to give appointments, you begin to see that even if Mrs. A knows the issue better than Mrs. B, and if Mrs. B is from his own tribe, you want to use Mrs. B. It's like saying, oh, you have a fight that you need a lion to fight, but that lion is not from your tribe. Then you say the cat. Then you say, after all, both of them are carnivorous animals. They cannot shut it. And you bring a cat to do the job of a lion. It's not possible. The cat, yes, is a carnivorous animal. Yes, that cannot shut it. But the cat cannot do the job of a lion or a tiger or a leopard. So, but that is what happens in a system where people tend towards their tribe. And that's one of the banes of Nigerian politics. The leadership recruitment process is skewed along tribal interests, along religious interests. So you see how difficult it is to get the best. If people are contesting election, even as a president of a country or as a governor in the various states, I wouldn't want to mention states. There are some states that if you come from some part of the state, you can never be the governor of the state, even if you are the best material at the time. In Nigeria, if you want to contest election, they first know, is it our turn? Is it their turn? If it is it the turn of the Muslims? Is it the turn of the Christians? So this creates problem to recruit the best material, because you are not assessing the person you want to recruit to the leadership position based on competence. You assess the person based on how he worships his God, or from the part of the map of the country the person comes from.
Something they can't even control.
So these are the issues. But the key thing is, if the younger people can begin to gradually downplay the issue of religion and religion in the politics of Nigeria, the leadership recruitment process will improve. We'll begin to recruit people better. When I was contesting in 2015, because of this religious divide between me and Buhari, I used to tell people that, look, if you are sick, let us say you have a kidney problem and you go to the hospital, you ask for the best doctor. You will not ask whether that doctor is from Enugu or from Kano or from Ibadan, if it is in Nigeria, but you ask. If they say this is the best doctor, you are comfortable with. When you're hungry, you don't care where the person who's serving the food is from Meduguri or from Yenagua. You eat the food. That is normal human. But whenever it comes to a leadership recruitment process through the political recruitment programs of election and so on and so forth, our wisdom is masked by these sentiments of region and religion. But Nigeria today, we are divided along tribal lines, we are divided along religious lines, and it worries me. And if we don't make any changes, which is difficult to make, it may continue even to your grandchildren, because we started wrongly. And there's no real effort to make sure we change.